To everyone's surprise and to the dismay of Freemasons, Joseph II issued an edict on the 11th of December 1785, which he wrote in his own hand. He declared that, from all the information that he had received, he believed that the activities of the Freemasons were beneficial. But there were obvious dangers in the existence of a secret organization, some of whose lodges might be used as a cloak for seditious revolutionary activities. So he declared that no more than one Freemason lodge should exist in any province of the empire, with the exception was made in the case of 3 capitals, Vienna, Budapest and Prague, and 3 lodges could be formed in each of these great cities, particularly of the office, members and meeting places of all Freemasons' lodges had to be given by Freemasons to the police. Although at the time the Freemasons were dismayed by Joseph II's edict, they afterwards looked at it in retrospect as beneficial, compared to what was soon to come within a few years. When Joseph died in 1790, the French Revolution had begun, and this everywhere increased the hostility of governments towards Freemasons. Before 1789, despite all the talk about the Illuminati, the kings of Europe and the conservatives were not seriously frightened of the Freemasons, but after the revolutions had broke out, they believed that they had realized too late it was the Freemasons who were responsible for this calamity, which they had been plotting for many years in the meeting of their lodges. In the case of the French Revolution, as in the case of the American Revolution, some of the revolutionary leaders were Freemasons and some were not, and while the enemies of the revolution claimed that the Freemasons were responsible for it, some of the bitterest opponents of the revolutions were themselves Freemasons. Just as the American Revolution, some Freemasons had been ardent supporters of George III. Because of this, the leading English Freemasons, both in the 18th century and today, had protested that the Freemasons had nothing to do at all with the American or French revolutions. But the popular belief among Catholics and conservatives in Europe that the Freemasons were responsible is not entirely unjustified. Many of the revolutionaries were Freemasons, and their slogan of liberty, equality and fraternity seems to coincide with the Freemasons' attitude. And that's from Jasper Ridley's late 1990s History of the Freemasons, a very accessible and easy read on the topic. Now, without going too in-depth in that book, Freemasonry spawned out of Knights Templars associations, modern Freemasonry, and then there's all the stories of the Druids and so on being in the background before that, to become a secret order with very strong within military ranks and so on, officer level ranks. This, of course, we all know that's a very true history about the Bavarian Illuminati infiltrating them in Whitestop and all this, and when they found the papers, that when he fled Bavaria to avoid arrest and prosecution, they found his papers. And basically what they found was the world we live in today. Freemasonry did not start out, and still does not exist, as an organization to undermine Western values or traditional cultures in any country, in any society. Rather, think of Freemasonry as an organization that attracts a particular type of parasite. And this parasite is what is undermining society from within the Freemasonry's very, very powerful reach in terms of things like diplomatic immunity and so on. We are living in the esoteric times. What was written on those papers in Bavaria when Whitestop fled is the world we're living in now. There's nobody really in charge. Now, there's a lot of truth to that thing. There's no one in charge. There's no government in charge. There's no policy in charge. There is a loose association of concepts, constructs, assumptions, and their own favourite word, consensus, that are thrown out there, and they become fact. And they become fact as a means to undermine national sovereignty and to destroy anything that's not anarchist. The anarchist system is the enemy of totalitarian control. People and communities, the tribal structure, are anarchist by nature. Now, I was talking to a friend in England last night I've known for a long time, and he was saying that he's years ago he might have thought about like waking people up and trying to, the information I'm just spreading there, to give it to them and to get them on board, try and cause some kind of mass awakening, whatever you want to call it. Now, he, like most others, and myself forever really, don't give a shit. Just spread the information out there. The ones who are willing to hear it, let them hear it. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Let them hear it, and then ignore them. And then get on with your own life, get on with your own way of living and your own way of doing things, and survive and enjoy life and take care of it. Once you and your loved ones are okay, that's okay. Now, this whole thing with this plan, it's a plan that's almost like chaos magic in a way. This is one of the biggest mistakes conspiracy theorists make when they do think of all this stuff, is they think it's done to the nth degree. It's a form of chaos magic. I'm still not sure if George Orwell was on our side or on their side, but it doesn't matter. He ultimately is on their side, because the book 1984 became Discordia and was enchanted into reality by people thinking, talking about it, and worrying about it all the time. It became the Bible of premonition and truth in the end. And we're living in the days, as my friend was saying last night, we're living in that book now. I was reading there yesterday about a guy in England facing a 10-year prison sentence because he touched a woman in a bar on the arm. He's been done for sexual assault. She's claiming that she can't go to Oxford University now because he touched her on the arm. There's no hope for this new generation there. This is why they're obsessed with death, as Vice magazine said. This is why it's all over. There's so much mental illness out there. It's got to the point where I cannot even be around people who have even the slightest amount of mental illness. It's everywhere. And we live in a world where mental illness is now the default. And it's not an evolutionary thing, and it's not a thing to be tolerant of people of mental illness. Mental illness is seen as a revolutionary act by these people who were behind that. What I just read. Disruption, chaos. You look at the French Revolution, it's very similar to what's happening on a global scale today. People who would have normally never have survived in society were given power, and it led to things like the Reign of Terror, Robespierre, which I did in the other video on the other channel, I think, maybe it was on this channel. And we are living in the esoteric times, and it's really a time of esoteric chaos. How is it going to end? I really don't know, but it's not looking good now, because they've completely lost control. The internet has become sentient. It's probably an entity like Corazon, or Corazon, how you want to pronounce it. And I shouldn't have said that, but I see whatever. Anyway, C333 or something like that, the digital djinn, and it's creating artificial constructs of human psychology in real time. It's a seed of madness. It's just driving everything that's wrong with humans. People have no concept of conflict resolution. They immediately go into hysteria and smear campaigns. People have no concept of privacy, decency, anything. It's just immediately everyone goes to war. Everyone posts every detail about their family life online, their home life. It's just all data for this machine that's taken over. And they're now add to this that they're taking all this chaos esoteric Freemasonry that we now live in, and they're now putting into things like quantum computing and throwing it off into the domains, other realms, to have equations solved. And it's early days yet, but it's early days yet. This thing will either blow up in their face or finally finish us off as a civilization. The lunatics really have taken over the society, over the asylum. And the reason for this is that we are all, the human race is insane. We are the lunatics. We're not safeguarding our psychic space. We're not safeguarding and maintaining the integrity of our psychic firewalls. And therefore, we're becoming very similar to organisms which are self-destructive by nature, because we're actually feeding something now. You're livestock. You are the Eloi. You are feeding the Molechs and the Molochs, and the Morlocks are these types that think of what we live in the world today as Freemasonry metastasized, malignancy, and as a result, society has become metastasized and malignant. And this has happened for the same reason. A great analogy is you have two heavy metal teenagers in, say, somewhere in America, we'll just say for a sake, because this is where I know the stories are from. They're back in the 80s, they're listening to heavy metal. They're into all the metal bands, death rocks, and they're a combination of smoking weed, alcoholism, immaturity, sensationalism, that spooky titillation that teenagers love, being on that edgelord kind of thing. They start doing rituals that they don't fully understand, summoning Satan in an old abandoned wood or something, and then one of them eventually kills the other, and then they kill themselves. Well, that's where society is now. This is Western society. The whole of Western society right now is dysfunctional heavy metal 80s teenagers summoning the devil because they think it's fun, and it's destroying them. This is why people don't know what genders they are. They cry at every drop of a hat. This Generation Z is looking really bad in terms of if it gets any system power. Now, of course, kids today, teenagers and young people today, there's lots of them who are cool and sound and dead on and got their heads together. But will these ones be the driving force of the future? No, because the dysfunctionality is now the model ever since then. Now, this is the thing, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The creation of the three structured lodges in Prague, Vienna, and Budapest suited the Holy Roman Empire, or the Austro-Hungarian Empire, because it was a way of controlling them. And then the Freemasons, the smart ones, came to see, yes, we probably do need controlling and regulation somehow, because this esoteric stuff attracts people who are insane. And look what happened in France, where you had very high regulation of Freemasonic lodges in America, and when the American Revolution happened, it didn't result in a purge or a bloodbath. It was very pragmatic, mainly because they were living in America and had a blank slate. Now, what happened in the French Revolution is so key to what's happening today. In the French Revolution, you had people who couldn't read and write deciding complex corporate law, statutes, and particularly justice. They were, people who could barely string a sentence together in Paris were actually in charge of the court system. And this is why so many people who are perfectly fine, who are just not insane like the rest of them, went to the guillotine. Why vast numbers of Catholics in the south of France who wouldn't convert to the goddess of reason were executed. And the fact that you saw that video, I'll post it down below, the god Vulcan rising up in Paris. The esoteric empire is here. The French Freemasons by association and connection with the Bavarian Illuminati have metastasized. You can't go around today pointing to someone who's a member of Freemasonic Lodge and saying, you're responsible for all this, because he's not responsible for it. It's out of control. It's a beast that's gone out of control. And this is why in the early days people said Freemasonry is not a bad idea. Then they realized it needs regulation. Now it's not regulated. It's gone wild. It's gone metastasized. It's gone cancerous. And I mean, the actual processes of things like liberalism and republicanism has gone toxic. And I look at where France went, and France never got better. France just became a warmongering empire. And although it produced decent people who were trying to better things after Robespierre was executed in the Reign of Terror and the Committee on Public Safety was abolished, France never really recovered, and it lost its place as a power. It's still losing its place as a power. France should have been the equal of the United States. It just lost everything, and it continues to die. And you look the same in Sweden. Sweden is run by there's two branches of Freemasonry in Europe, three actually, well, four really. There's the Scottish Rite, the York Rite. Well, they be the Grand Lodge of England. There's the Irish Rite, which is not based on the Scottish Rite, but it's its own thing. Most of the Freemasonic lodges in the United States are based on the Grand Lodge of Ireland in Dublin. That's their mother lodge. And also the Apollo Lodge in Dublin. Then you have the York Rite and the Scottish Rite based out of Edinburgh, and the main lodge in Edinburgh and the main lodge in London. Now that's the English-speaking Freemasonry, and also they're also big in places like Japan and Egypt, Egypt and also India. Then there's the European Freemasonic rites. You have two orders, right? You have the Grand Orient in Paris, which is the French Freemasonic, which sees itself as the direct lineage of the Illuminati. Coupled with that, the original Illuminati, not the Bavarian Illuminati. Coupled with that, you have the Swedish Rite. Now, the Swedish Rite is the most powerful one of all, because they're all the Freemasonic lodges in Central Europe, Germany, and all the way to Eastern Europe and Russia. And you look at Sweden today, and you know the future. Sweden is a completely insane society. Greta Thunberg is the soul of Sweden. Our tribal elders in the past would have had a warrior king or a strong wise man. Think of a combination of the King of Swords and the King of Cups in the tarot. Now they have a huffy, angry, Veruca Salt type 16-year-old girl with pigtails ordering millions around and telling them what to do. We have become so far detached from what we are as a species that there's only one thing that can account for this, and that is sorcery of the darkest and kind. And what's the most evil and darkest form of sorcery? No, it isn't black magic sitting down to do sacrifices and evil things. The purest form of magic and sorcery is one where it's true to the heart, it's true to the practitioner, where there's a respect for the process, where it's thought out correctly. The worst form of sorcery is sorcery that is out of control. Working as a cauldron or a furnace or a blast furnace in the minds of powerful people who instinctually, and this is what the internet is now, it's out of control, it's cancerous, it's metastasized. And this is what's wrong today. There's no spiritual guidance. They have become detached from the spirit. And this is what the other video I made tonight on wokeness. They have become detached from the spirit. There's no sense of self-realization. There's no grand plan to do good. There's only control issues, only control methods, and they don't even know what they're doing. No, Robert Anton Wilson was bang on. No one is in charge, and Alan Moore says the same, and that's what they mean by that. It's an element of the sorcery of these people, the spiritual trajectory of these people is completely shattered, and as a result society is shattered. And rather than having a a powerful tribal leader, a king, or even a queen like a Queen Elizabeth, to guide the Queen Elizabeth I now, or Catherine the Great, to guide the nation. We have a huffy, dysfunctional 16-year-old Swedish girl controlling the planet right now. Everybody from CEOs to prime ministers and presidents, all through every aspect of the economic model of society, are now taking orders directly from a 16-year-old girl. Do you remember when you were a 16-year-old? What did you know about the world? You didn't know shit. You didn't know shit. And then shudder the thought of that becoming the guiding force of Western civilization. And that's how bad things are.